Hello, everyone. This is Mary Lou Kaiser, host here at the Play Your Position podcast. You are about to listen to number 500 here at PYP, and I am immensely proud of that achievement. When I started my podcasting journey 10 years ago, I remember thinking I would be really excited if I hit 50. And here I am with 10 times that many episodes of the show now published and out in the world, adding value to all of us who have said yes when the call to leadership came our way and continue to play our positions to the best of our abilities. I feel so grateful to the hundreds of guests who have sat down with me behind the mic and shared their stories of getting the call to leadership, what that has meant for them, what that means for all of us as we continue to grow and learn about who we are and how playing our position in the world makes a difference. I sat around for quite a bit of time and thought about who did I want to have as my 500th episode? And since Meryl Streep and Marcus Mariota were not available, I decided to reach out to a dear friend of mine who was on my show back in 2015. I think his episode is number 55 or 58. His name is Dr. Taylor Hartman, and his body of work has been so instrumental in helping me play my position really well. I wanted to bring him back on as just to celebrate number 500, and he showed up in more ways than I could have ever asked for. Our conversation is full of laughter and great content. You're going to walk away from listening today with a new perspective on who you are, and that's always the goal. A couple of just little minor things. Dr. Hartman had his phone connected to his computer, and he was getting a plethora of text messages right when we were having our conversation. I did my best to downplay those, but you may hear some extra dings. Don't let that distract you from the amazing value of our conversation today. So just a little heads up on that. And team, if you are ready for kickoff, I know I am. Let's go.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Oh my God.
I love you.
It was so fun to revisit the color code, read the book again, read through the red, the white, and then of course the yellows and the blues. And
Right.
just thinking about how powerful it is. It's not to pigeonhole people. It's not to, put them into a box. It's really
To free them, actually.
and to free yourself, because you're like, here comes the red blast.
And to forgive people.
Yes.
Instead of saying, how could you? It's like, I get it, But
Right.
It's funny, at my age now, I don't apologize anymore. I'm like, if you don't want to get it, I get it. Just don't. Like, there's things I don't want to get, and that's my issue, right? There's a consequence.
Oh man, there is such a consequence. Well, listeners, I am talking with Taylor Hartman, Dr. Taylor Hartman today. We've been laughing and catching up. It's been 8 years, believe it or not, since he first appeared on my show.
Absolutely.
Way back in the early old gangster days of me as a podcaster. And I will be sure to put a link to that episode with him, because you're going to want to listen to that one as well. Because in that episode, he discusses in detail his life's work, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. We're also going to focus more on his leadership journey in his life. And that's something we really didn't talk about in the episode when I first talked to you, Taylor. What's crazy is that this episode is number 500 for me. Play Your Position number 500, and you were number 55 or something. So I have 10 times as many episodes. I
I'm
can't.
so proud of you, by the way. I want you to know, I hope your listeners know, like I have my own podcast that I actually stopped just recently because it's a lot of work. And
It
I just
is.
want you to know how much I applaud your efforts. You have been such a stable influence in this industry, which is not easily done. So congratulations.
Thank you for that. And I really do appreciate those words because it podcasting, I was laughing the other day. There's an ad that's running right now. I think it's for Allstate Insurance. You know, my mom and I are big sports fans. And so we're watching, baseball
Right.
playoffs and we're watching football and all this kind of stuff. And it is absolutely making fun of podcasts. It's like there's
Oh,
this,
is it?
oh yeah, there's this kind of nerdy guy who's talking to all these people in his office, and he's in an elevator, and he's at the boardroom, and he's saying, there's a podcast about tea. There's a podcast about fly fishing. And I just looked at my mom. I said, do you see? People don't understand. It's like everybody's in the podcasting game now.
Right.
And so it's become so diluted that someone like even yourself who did it for 2 years, right? You were 2 years and solid.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Not easy at all. And
Right.
I really applaud you for the consistency, which, by the way, being a white doesn't surprise me. I'll be good at that, just so you know. I love that about you. And as a yellow, I jumped ship after 2 years. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. So team, I'm going to introduce Dr. Taylor Hartman to you very briefly, but I'm going to let him fill in the gaps. Again, you can tell that we have a lot of fun together. We have known each other for a long, long time, and I have followed his work closely. His life's work is about what is our core motive as human beings. And
Right.
he has a theory that we come out into this world with an innate drive, something that drives us. And there's 4 colors that he has assigned to through his work as a psychologist and
Right.
somebody who has worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of people and done deep data analysis of what this is not personality. This is really about your core drive. So
Right.
before I'm going to have you talk a little bit, just give us that 360-degree view for listeners who are new to you, and then we'll get into your leadership journey specifically as it pertains to your work as a psychologist and also with working with the color code or the people code as you call it now.
I'm happy to do that. That's great. So, my work, honestly, Mary Lou, was I wanted to help people get better. And in my field of psychology, everything depends on this, depends on that. It's very vague. And I thought that just doesn't work for me. I want to give people answers like math is 2 plus 2 and it's 4, right? So when I did like a second PhD researching what could I count on always for a Black person that's 85 in Seattle or a newborn Mexican baby in Florida, what is something I could hang on to that was always true? And what I discovered was the driving core motive, which is so cool because it's not just your behavior. Like if you do certain things that describes who you are, it actually explains why you do what you do. So your why. So for reds, that is power. And power means they love to move from A to B. They just are like sharks. They have to be moving or they're not okay, right? And blues and reds are the heavyweights. They spend their life trying to control other people. Blues are driven by intimacy. They crave connection, sharing, revealing. They're more emotional. Reds are more logical. And they are both controllers. And by the way, blues are stronger with control than reds because it's all about emotion and morality. Then you have the whites, and the whites, they're like the hippies of the color code. They're just so misunderstood. They don't talk and flap their lips, so nobody knows who they really are. But they don't have that ego base that other colors have. They're driven by peace. They love peace. In fact, I'm working with a couple right now where she just said, I can't take it anymore. I just want to be alone with my horses and nobody talk to me. So her blue husband is learning how to give her space and still stay connected. And then the yellows are the fun lovers. They're driven by fun. And Mary Lou, as we've done this work for so many years now, I've realized there's 35% blue, 25% red, 20% yellow personalities around the world with their core motives. So if you understand the driving core, and there are many people that have a secondary color, You, for example, are white secondary with yellow.
Right.
So you have a wonderful, yours is the most likable personality, by the way. And you'll always marry someone difficult. Just plan on it. You'll do it.
Hello.
You're being. So everybody has a core. And I've done this for so many years now. I can't believe how enriching it is to know it. You don't get stuck. Like I'm a yellow, but I've written books, I've led companies. It's not like it defines the level of your life. It just explains your why. That's the bottom line.
And it's so easy to understand yourself once you get into this world. And team, I'll have a link to his books actually, and he's writing a new one, which I can't wait for it to come out. And I'll have him talk about that in a second. You know, a lot of us here at Team PYP have gone through many different kinds of assessments. There's, obviously the Myers-Briggs, that's a granddaddy of many of them. And then there's Colby, and there's DISC, and there's the Enneagram. And I have gotten something from each assessment that I've ever taken. But the one that has stayed with me and helps me the most is the Hartman personality.
Thank you.
And I say that objectively. Like if I had only seen you once, at an event, and you had taken us through your amazing and fun presentation and then had us go and do our test and then find out what our color was, I would still find it the most, at least for me, it has helped me with communication. It has helped me understand my relationships and why I consistently seem to find myself with a red. I have a red mother, a red daughter. I had a red grandmother. My father was white, yellow like me. And that was really cool to understand that. And then I have a yellow, red brother.
Wow.
My mother's red, yellow. My father was white, yellow. They were an amazing couple. Amazing couple.
Imagine. Yep.
And then my brother, growing up, yellow, red, and me as a white, yellow, we just laughed a lot. We laughed so much. So, okay. Again, team, I'm going to encourage you to go take the test, get the book, get yourself into this. But let's focus now.
I'll forget this. I'm too yellow.
Okay, go ahead.
I want your listeners to know if they go on TaylorHartman.com.
Yes.
And put in the code KAYSER 30, then they get 30% off.
Oh, wonderful.
And that's for you because of your 500 celebrating episode. And your listeners deserve that.
Yes.
So there you go.
That's awesome. So again, team, there'll be a link to that reminder on his Taylor show notes page at pyppodcast.com, and take this. It is so revealing. Okay, so let's go back in time, Taylor, to when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? Do you remember a specific moment when you realized I'm stepping into a leadership role, or was it more gradual? Tell us your story.
Wow, that's fun. I think back to when I was a missionary for my church in Denmark. And I was so yellow, Mary Lou. I just loved people. I loved being there. I loved just the experience itself. And before I knew it, I was put into a leadership role that I never expected nor needed. I just liked helping people. And what I discovered was people listened to me. Like there was an energy that I had that I kind of bring like a circus to town. Like there's all this energy that goes around it. And I've come later to realize that I wish I had a little bit more of the structure. That's not one of my strengths. But in fact, I do bring a sense of urgency and zest, which people enjoy. And so that kind of was an awakening for me. I never thought about that. In fact, you'll get a kick out of this. When I returned home, almost 3 years later, my red mother said, "I wish you'd never gone." I said, "What?" And she said, "You just used to be so happy and do whatever I asked you to do." and now I was challenging her and speaking up. And it was funny because I remember that as like I had become more red, more like direct and upfront and assertive and still very playful and happy. But it offended my mother, who was used to running the show and me agreeing. Isn't that funny?
That is funny. So you were what, in your early 20s, or were you a teenager still? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did that lead you to then go on and be the leader that you are? Because you've been a leader in the mental health space, the whole psychology space. You obviously have two books that have been done extremely well. You've worked with companies of all sizes and people from all over the world.
Right.
So you are a leader in your industry.
But it's serendipity, Mary Lou. Honestly, I never sought it. I never needed it. And but I'm strong. Like what I believe is important. And I don't think I have all the knowledge of all areas by any means, but where I am knowledgeable, which is mental health, I feel very adamant about that. Treating people with respect and at the same time pushing for positive change. I have major issues with today's mental health that allow for people who are twisted in their thinking and irrational to believe they are okay. Because what happens is it'll only make them worse. It's like if someone feeds you a bad diet, but convinces you somehow it'll make you stronger, and it doesn't, of course, then you're upset at the end of that. Like, why did I believe something that was unhealthy? I feel even more strongly about mental health that same way. So I'm very principled about what matters in my field. And I feel like we've lost a lot of the edge in that arena.
Okay. So what can we do, for listeners who are perhaps have people in their lives who, mental health has become the new hashtag, everything now. It's so interesting because when I was a young person coming of age, and even into my 20s and 30s, we didn't talk about this at all. It was still such a no-no. And I know there are people who still can't.
True.
Because it's been so culturally ingrained in us that you've got to be strong. You can't be weak if you're having a mental health day. But now I'm seeing even celebrities who are canceling, like rock and country music artists who are canceling shows because I have anxiety. And I'm thinking, wow, what has happened? I'm curious about what can we do collectively as leaders of our lives, as leaders in our families, to perhaps have conversations that move us in a direction that is more positive around mental health instead of letting it take over in a way where people are feeling helpless and almost like it's become a Band-Aid and an excuse to not do stuff.
I love those words too. I can't stand the idea of a Band-Aid. It's so unhealthy. I'm just going to take a brief segue for a minute and talk about the color code. Like every color brings gifts for mental health. Like the red gift of being responsible. Like they're so good at just taking responsibility, which by the way, we're struggling with in mental health today. We don't necessarily own our issues. For example, if I've been wronged and I stay stuck in why I was wronged by my parents and I'm 55 years old, like I missed my life because I wouldn't be responsible for it. The blues have the gift of compassion. Like there are people that, I don't know why it is, we can't just accept that everybody has different ways of looking at life and be able to discuss that without being so harsh and strident about it. And blues bring that gift of compassion. Whites are kind. Like the one thing I love about whites is they really don't make it about hurting people. That's not important for them. And then you have yellows who are forgiving. Like they don't get stuck in judging people. And I really think that's a problem for poor mental health is when people can't add the gifts of the other colors. It limits their capacity for good mental health. And then a second thought I wanted to share was we have learned to run away from problems rather than addressing them. Everybody has anxiety anymore. I'm like, well, that's not a big deal. Like that's not uncommon for people to have anxiety. It's all anxiety is fear of the future. I mean, that's what it is. But if you don't face it, then it owns you. And so I think we need to teach our young people to go toward, not away from the things they fear. And of course, the greatest fear is fear itself. Like that's the sad part. So I have strong feelings about that, for example. That's an example of what I would do.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to hear these things because as with everything, pendulums are swinging back and forth.
Right.
And right now, my impression of the whole conversation around mental health has gone, it's the pendulum has swung too far. And
Correct.
There's never a perfect balance ever. I mean, if you look at nature, nothing is symmetrical, right? Our faces aren't symmetrical, although some people now, because of Instagram, are going to their plastic surgeons and saying, please make my face symmetrical, which is weird. But if you look at trees, for example, you can see how the different they might have a bend or a curve because for a couple of years the winds were stronger than others and they just adapted. And so it is an interesting time. And going back to the leadership conversation, what kinds of things would each color, each leader who's like a red leader, a blue leader, a yellow leader, and a white leader bring to an organization or a business or just a career?
So reds bring vision. They're so good at living in the future. They live 10 years out. And that's why they struggle with vacations, because they really hate the here and now as much as they'd like to think they would enjoy it. They struggle because they're always thinking ahead, right? And they're really good at motivating people because people trust them. And I've always said this, a good red, I would follow them anywhere. Not a bad red. A bad red will kick me to the side if they need to, but a good red will get everybody across the street, which is so impressive. And blues have the gift of connection. Some of the best salespeople are blue because they connect with relationships and they keep the relationships very strong, which is a real gift that blues bring. And they care about their people. I've always found that great leaders in my mind care about their people. They're not just widgets. In fact, the best CEOs I've ever worked with want their people to be able to provide for their children. That's how they think about them. Then you have the whites, and the whites are really, what I love about whites is they're so willing to accept diversity. They're not ego-based. They're the only color that is not driven by ego at all. And what I mean by that is they are not threatened by people who have different thinking. So they're very good at bringing around them smart people because it doesn't threaten them. Yellows, again, they bring the zest. They have this incredible charm about them, charisma. You know what they're like? They're like the dinner table next to you that's having such a great time. And you're like, why am I not sitting at that table? Yeah. So yellow leaders can bring that inspiration to their organization.
Do yellow leaders also, you were talking about the being good. I feel like yellows can be really good salespeople too, because they're so charismatic.
100%. People like to be with them.
Right. And they make them laugh.
Which, you know what, by the way, laughter is the shortest connection between people. Yellows don't offend people. They're much more playful that way. They don't take things personally. People like to see them. So come around and they'll buy from them. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
That's good to know. And again, I'm fascinated by how what you've developed, your life's work is so useful when, for example, you walk into a room for the first time and perhaps you're attending a fundraiser, or maybe you're a speaker at an event, and being armed with an understanding of the colors can help you read the room.
Yes.
It can help you think through, wow, is the content that I am bringing to this event, whether, again, you're there to support the fundraiser, the organization that's doing that, or maybe it's just a social event, and you're mingling and you're meeting new people and getting a sense. And I'm not saying you can, again, it's not to stereotype and it's not to box people in. It's more, what I found it really valuable for is conversation. Because if I know I'm talking to a yellow, I'm going to bring out, I'm going to communicate in a way that makes them feel like they're having fun, right?
That's a communicator, right?
Right. And if I'm talking with the blue, there's going to be more warmth. Not that I wouldn't have that, but with the red, I'm not going to have a long, shaggy dog story. They're not going to listen to me.
They're not interested. That's exactly right.
Interested at all.
Communicator, why would you not want to play to the audience that you're talking to? Why would you not want to do this, right? So that's what you're saying that I really admire. And I think it's unfortunate that people don't understand the power it brings them. I mean, Mary Lou, let's look for this example at emotional intelligence. It's kind of taken front and center, right? If you really understand the color code and emotional intelligence, so there's self-awareness. That is the foundation for all emotional intelligence. The color code is all about self-awareness. Like, how do I come across? Who am I as an individual? Can I love myself for who I am? Can I accept others for who they are, right? Then number 2 is motivation. That's the red gift. Nobody is motivated as much as reds, right? Then you have the white gift is self-regulation. They regulate themselves so that emotions don't own them. Then you have the blue gift of empathy, like the ability to feel for other people, and the yellow gift is social skills. So ironically, and they were done separately, the color code was done before emotional intelligence, and yet they blend perfectly. So if you don't develop the gifts of the other colors, you're limited in your emotional intelligence.
And you're limited in your life experience and perhaps opportunities, again,
Yeah.
within an organization, or if you're looking to grow a business. I mean, even understanding, is my audience primarily red, blue,
Right.
yellow, white? Different products, different services are going to appeal to, different.
Colors.
Yeah, it's again, not to pigeonhole, but really as a way of understanding so that you make more intelligent decisions.
Well, and I would never hire somebody without knowing their color. You can't
Right.
make the decision based on color, but you certainly want to give people a chance to win.
Yeah.
And if you understood what the job requires and the person that you're dealing with, it would make you much more simpatico.
Exactly. Oh God. I'm sure over the years of your work, you have been in organizations where you're like, oh, you are in the wrong
Right.
role.
Well, and it's so sad because they're really good people, but they're not
Right.
succeeding. You've got them pigeonholed in the wrong place. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some things that people, Team PYPs listening and they're thinking, oh, maybe they might have a hunch of what their color is based on what you've described so far. What are some tips that you have for people to become, I guess, more effective from their strength as their primary color? What are some things that you've taught over the years to professionals specifically that you've seen, wow, that really made a difference?
I think what's so critical is you play to the strengths, but people don't get fired or divorced because of their strengths. They lose out because of their limitations. So if you play to your strengths, like put your energy where you're really good, and then pick one thing that you think is limiting you, it's keeping you back, and then look for the antidote. Because I feel like when I have a limitation, it's preventing me from getting where I want to go in my life. So I look to see who has the gift that I need instead of drinking the poison that I'm having that would lift me. And I still remember this. You'll laugh. I was working on being thoughtful. That was my goal for 6 months. Very blue gift. My blue wife says to me, "Oh, that's real difficult." And I thought she's putting me down because she doesn't think it's that big a deal. I said, "Okay, you be happy. You wake up happy every day." And she goes, "Oh." So, so what we
Touche.
find, that's cliche, right? What we find is easy, others find. So what I found though, Mary Lou, was in me working on being thoughtful, the blues in my life really, really felt connected to me. They really appreciated them more about me because I was just basically saying, I value you. What I like is who you are, and I want that. So when I worked on being assertive, the reds seemed to appreciate me more. I mean, every color I've worked on, it seems like those people are more appreciative of my role in their life. So that's how I play to my strengths, which is yellow, playful, engaging, fun, forgiving. But I want to become better. I want to grow. And I found that it's been very helpful to me in my career to actually develop those traits along the way.
Right. And that's what your second book is about, being charactered. That's what you
Right.
call it, is becoming more charactered. And some people, as they get older and have more experience and learn
Yep.
things about themselves, do that, and maybe not even knowing what their color, what their primary core is, but being armed with knowledge about this can make you more aware of, oh yeah, maybe I should shut my mouth once in a
Right. No,
while,
that's
or
exactly right. Thank you.
listen, right?
Right.
Right.
No. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I love people who are humble enough that they're willing to hear. Maybe my life would be better if I did this. What I have found, by the way, through all the years I've worked on this, is that insecurity is the death knell. If I'm too insecure to hear and grow, then I get stuck. So the more secure you can become, the more willing you are to open up to growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, do you think that that's something you have to want for yourself? I guess there are people that never ever reconcile they're behaving, again, not knowingly, they're behaving as, say, a red when they're really a blue or a
You
white.
know
I
what?
remember when I first was introduced to the color code, I just presumed, oh, I'm red. Well, guess what? I've been conditioned by the world to show up that way.
Right.
And when I took the test and I got at first I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then the more I said, well, yeah, duh.
No,
You know,
no. Oh my gosh, that is so good. It's like an aha.
it
Like
was.
when you actually settle into your true self, it's like coming home to a nice overstuffed chair and going, this fits. Because ironically, when I'm the author of this, Mary Lou, I thought it was red. My wife said, red? What red? I said, are you kidding? I have a successful practice. I show up every day. She goes, Taylor, where's your office? Well, it was at the beach. Even if a client doesn't come, I said, I go to the beach. And she goes, that's not a red.
No.
But I, like you, raised to be a red, right? I'm working with a woman right now who is blue secondary red, and she is about to lose her job. And she can't understand what's happening. And as soon as I have the color code results in front of me, I said, oh my gosh, you're sending negative red behavior insight, and you think you're blue, but you're coming across negative red. That sabotages anybody trusting you because you're not congruent. So helping her to learn to be congruent is her only hope.
And explain to listeners that the nuance of that. So when you take the test and you find out your primary color, you look at your strengths, and then there's the dark side of your your Darth Vader side, for Star Wars fans listening,
right.
Kind of almost like an alter ego. So how does seeing that list play into, again, becoming more, well, you said to become better at relationships and work and being a parent or whatever you're doing in life?
Well, whether you're seeing it or not, Mary Lou, others are. So wouldn't it be nice to see it yourself? So on the profile, there's 45 questions, and half are positive, half are negative. So when you get a driving core, that just tells you, okay, so I am naturally driven by intimacy. But you may have a lot of answers that are red. Okay, now they're not all positive necessarily. So it actually prints it out for you. You get a 12-page printout that shows you where your strengths are and your limitations. So what I recommend to people is look at your strengths and see if you are playing to those. That's number one. And then number two, look at your limitations and say, am I sabotaging my strengths? For example, this woman I'm talking about right now, he's driven by intimacy. Her negative red traits are not causing anyone to want to be intimate with her. So she needs to say, if I want to get my needs fit, I've got to work through my negatives. So I'm not sending messages that deprive people of wanting to be close to me. See, if she were red, she wouldn't worry about that with them being intimate with her. Her problem would be they're not working with me to get to be. So it's a very different focus. You want to align your behavior with your core.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. And if you're out of alignment, anybody who gets regular chiropractic knows.
Right.
You just don't feel right. Everything is off, even slightly. You might be limping around, or it's like you can't get your shoulder. And it's the same way with how we show up in the world. And it's not until we get these insights that the Hartman personality test will reveal that now you can start making different decisions about, 100%. Again, it maybe you are stuck right now. And who doesn't get stuck once in a while? It could be because you're out of alignment and you don't understand why. It's like that. You sit around, you're like, I just know there's something not right, but I can't put my finger on it. Maybe this will reveal to you, oh, that's because I'm a yellow and I'm in a really, red industry.
You know, it's funny about that. I love that. Incongruent leaders, people want to push away from them. They don't want to follow them. And the incongruent leader wants to believe what they're offering is good. So they're frustrated with what's happening. But if they could get more clarity on what's incongruent, that's what their followers are seeing. So that would make them much more successful in learning about that.
Do you have a story, without naming names, of an organization or a company you worked with where you helped turn that around through working with top leadership, and perhaps some of the key, employees that they came to the table that were like at an impasse?
Right. They couldn't see it. And once they all did the profile, So they went on taylorhartman.com, figured out who they were, right? Then we discussed, did you see yourself the way you see yourself now that you've seen this? And then I asked the team members, how do you see this person? And that was revealing. A lot of people were like shocked that people saw them a certain way. And then we looked and said, what could we do to be better personally to make this team stronger? Let's just work at the top leadership level. And it's a very exciting, challenging opportunity. Here's the good and the bad news. I have seen so much success. It's almost hard to believe. And it always is because people did their work, always. And I'm happy to navigate that with them, but they're the ones doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have those situations where, honestly, Mary Lou, they never stepped into it. They were too afraid to do it. They wanted to stay stuck in their role the way they were, and people didn't trust them. And so it stopped. And it's very sad to see that happen. If the top person doesn't do their job, then nobody else can in the organization. So I think at the end of the day, I've had so much positive and so much negative. It just depends on the players if they're willing to play.
Oh, 100%. It really does. And you can only do so much, right?
You're right.
As a leader. I mean, you come in as a leader and
right.
say, I'm going to lead you guys through this process. And at the end of the day, it is up to you to take what you learn and decide, am I going to implement this or not?
Agency is a huge piece of mental health.
Huge.
And people have the right to make poor choices and great choices, right? But I mean, my role, I think, is to help people believe it would be better to make the good ones and make them feel more secure about doing that. But I don't always succeed.
Well, that's okay. We can't have a 100% track record as much as we'd like, right?
You're right. You're right. It'd be great.
It would be so great. So let's talk about your forthcoming book, which is you're working on it now. Tell us what it's about and what prompted you to write another one.
Well, what prompted me was a young man he just loves my work. And he said, I've seen this change so many lives, and I would love to do the research for you if you'll write. Writing is something I'm comfortable doing. I just don't tend to like to do it. I'm yellow and I like But the book
Can I delegate?
Oh, it's so true. If I could delegate, I would do that. But it's about every color combination. There are 10. And so if you're in a red-red relationship, or red-blue, or red-white, or blue-white, or blue-yellow, or yellow, those colors are all going to be dealt with examples for how they manage big life decisions, sexual connection, financial issues, and everyday decision-making. And then I provide for them, from my years of experience, what was going on that caused them to be successful or unsuccessful. And hopefully it'll help people be able to read it and go, oh my gosh, I'm doing that now. Or that's an idea I've never thought about before. But it helps people by color combination of relationships to see themselves.
Is it primarily romantic relationships, or is it
personal? It's more personal. Yeah. It's not business. It's more personal.
Yeah. Which is, oh gosh, that's the one piece that I would try to read between the lines, in the color code about what are the nuances of, say, a red and yellow or red and white. I tend to always find myself with a red. So as a white. And I know, one of the things that's encouraging about that is that your studies and your analysis of many, many people and people in that dynamic is that it's a good one. And then there's combinations that are a little bit trickier. They're not impossible, but the odds aren't in the favor of.
Well, for example, the red-blue combination is one of probably the most popular, and yet it is the hardest one. No question about that. But you have great success stories and failures, right? Depending on whether they chose to embrace what was right about it and make it work versus those that said, no, I'm going to stay stuck in my own thinking. So you're absolutely right. Some color combinations are easier than others. I can't imagine, by the way, somebody could read this and not apply it all across the board to your kids, to your work associates, to your personal spouse. It's not any different, to be honest with you. We're people. And so if we could learn how to communicate with them on their terms, we'd be much more successful.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what most people want, is to feel more agency in their lives. They want to have better relationships with the people they love and care about.
Correct.
Unless they've been so conditioned to be miserable. And there are those where misery really is their best company.
Yeah, sadly true. You're sad. Yeah. It's sad when someone gets older, by the way, Mary Lou, and decides that's their path.
I
to me
know.
anyway. What a sad way to leave this life.
It is sad. It's no. And so, team, you're not going to do that.
Right. Don't do that.
Listeners,
For
you're
Mary
gonna
Lou, don't do it.
don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. So when is this book? Is it going to come out next year?
Yeah, next year. It'll come
Okay.
out.
Awesome. Well, I'll do a special shout out when it comes out. But again, in the meantime, team, you're going to want to grab the Kaiser 30 code on taylorhartman.com, where you can take this amazing, it doesn't take that long. It's not,
Very quick.
it's very quick. And you get 12-page printout that really goes into depth about your primary motive. And that's what we're talking about. This is not, motive does affect behavior, but it isn't behavior, right?
It's the why behind the behavior.
Exactly.
Much deeper.
It's much, much deeper. And, obviously, I was trying to remember when I think I was introduced to you in like 08,
Was it really? Oh my God.
07 or 08.
Yeah.
When I saw you speak for the first time and I took the test and I was just like, what? Actually, it has to be before that because it had to have been 05.
Was it?
Yeah. So we're going on almost 20 years that your work has influenced me as a parent. It's influenced me as a writer, as obviously a podcaster, I know who I'm talking to.
Yes, you do.
I don't require my guests to take the test, obviously, but it has given me insight into how to frame questions and follow up with what somebody says. And it's so this is a testament to your life's work. And I know you're at a point, you did your podcast for 2 years and you made a conscious decision to wrap that up. And I'll put a link to that as well, team, because boy, you want to first of all, just have a good time.
Thank
Listen
you.
to this. You can hear Taylor just laughs a lot and is funny. But also he and his co-host Kat really dive into a lot of different scenarios that apply to all of us.
Thank you.
Very helpful. So there'll be that, and you're at a stage of your life where you're continuing your private practice, correct?
I am.
You are, but you're choosing to do other things with your time.
That's right. I just need to break up some of my life so that at 74, I could actually maybe enjoy just some things rather than feeling obligated to keep doing it. So
what's one thing that's on your I know you took a big family trip down, was it to Peru and the Amazon and all that? You did that. Do you have something like that next year in the works?
India is in the works. And then for our 50th, we're going to do New Zealand and Australia. So we have lots of exciting plans for travel.
Yes. And I learned from the podcast that your wife is the master at planning these and you just show up.
I literally show up. I mean,
That's the best.
Adorable. It is the best for a yellow. I just pay for it. She does everything else.
I love that. I love it. Wow.
Thank you.
So as I hate that our hour is almost up, but it's gone so fast. I guess I'd like to, well, first of all, one question I don't think I asked you the first time we talked. Are there a couple of books that, who do you turn to when you're needing inspiration? Are there some books that you have on your shelf that you just pull out once in a while and open to a page? Or have you read something recently that really got you thinking? It could be anything at all. It doesn't have to be in the, the mental health space. It might be a fiction or
right.
What?
I love Jim Collins' work, Good to Great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a solid, legitimate book to work from in business. And I love the Arbinger Group. They've done some excellent work on peace and really understanding who you are. And I'm so sorry, I can't think. One is, I think, The Peace Givers.
Leadership and Self-Deception.
Thank you. There you are, saving me again. That's the one that I think really brilliant insight into who people are and how to interact with them better. So that's one of my favorites too.
That was one of the hardest books I've ever read because it punched me in the face.
See, you are willing to be punched. I love that.
I am willing to be punched. Now, nicely.
Not unkindly. Okay, you're right. You're right.
I should say it's not nice. Yeah, the kindness is the piece. No, but really, both of those books are very grounded and useful. So I'll put links to them on your show notes page as well, along with both of your books and your podcast. And what would you like to leave listeners with today in terms of ways that they can continue to get out there and play their positions to the best of their abilities?
I would just say that I really believe God blessed every child with phenomenal gifts. And if they did nothing but just stay true to who they were when they were born, they could navigate life well. And that we have a job, I think, a responsibility to advocate for people and believe in them and value them as they are without any suggestions for change. And if they want to change, be a resource for them. That's what I would say.
Oh, it's beautiful. So, Taylor, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for...
I love this today, by the way.
I love you and I love your work. Oh, man.
Same.
All your popular dings just made this so much, so real. And
I apologize. Oh, my God. But
you know what? It's life.
I want to say also your audience is lucky to have you. And I mean that. So
thank you for that.
You. Real pleasure. Always.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.